All right, everybody, I'm working on a very long video, the ultimate guide to master creation in 2025, and as I've been making this video, I thought of another video idea that I really need to do, and that is what I think is actually a pretty big problem. Now, I know it's alpha, the game is years from launch, people are going to be like, how the hell could this be like a huge problem? I'm going to tell you why it's a huge problem. I think gearing in this game right now is creating problems and is going to create extra work for the devs and could make the game longer to actually come out. What do I mean by that? Well, they keep doing balance patches for this game for archetypes, for skills of archetypes, and they are neglecting the gearing that is creating a lot of the imbalance. The time to kill in this game is extremely crazy once people get 400, 500 magical power and above, or 400 plus physical power. It's hard to get physical power, but people can. It is possible to do. And that creates imbalances. One, it's easier to stack magic power, so mages look more powerful than they actually are. Fighters look less powerful than they actually are. So they buffed fighter, they nerfed mage, but the real issue is it's easier to get magic power than it is physical power right now with the way itemization works. In addition, people are stacking either strength or intellect. Every archetype, for the most part, has caught on. Even tanks are stacking strength now. Clerics are stacking intellect. Everybody's stacking intellect if you're a magic damage dealer or a healer or a support. Everybody's stacking intellect. If you're physical, you're stacking strength. There is no cap at all to how much strength you can have, how much intellect you can have. There's no soft cap at all. And that creates situations where people are way more powerful than they probably should be, and the time to kill can be extremely low in a lot of cases once people get their gear juiced up immensely, like a lot of people have at this point. Now, what they have said, what Steven said at one point, is that gear would be a 40 to 50% influence on a player's overall power in the game. That is not currently the case at all. At all. And I think that is a problem. And I think games like Arcade had this problem too, and I think it was a big quit point for a lot of people in Arcade was how powerful gear could be and the massive differences in gear score that could exist from a player that's been playing for forever versus like newer players. It's a quit point for a lot of new players after a game has launched. And for a lot of new players that are going to come into Ashes of Creation right now, they're going to get some max level, they're going to see the gear disparity, and that's going to be a quit point for a lot of people. To be fair, a lot of Korean MMOs had kind of this issue, and I think it is an issue in the design of Korean MMOs, where gear is such a massive difference. Now, if it was only 40 to 50% of a player's power, if that's all gear was, I would be totally fine with it. I don't think that's too bad. It is way, way worse than that. It's like 80, 90% at least. And that creates infinite issues, unfortunately. And it makes balancing kind of futile when they're not accounting for the stats and the issues with stats. The biggest issues with stats are intelligence gives, all these are damage boosting stats. Strength, all these are damage boosting stats. Dexterity, one of these is an evasion. This is just critical attack. Attack speed and attack speed rating are not quite as big of a deal because these more affect your auto attacks than anything else. Same with wisdom. It's more affecting your auto attacks. Now, yes, you will cast your spells faster. Sure. But the actual damage comes more from intelligence and more from strength. And people have caught on to this. And they're stacking ridiculous amounts of strength and even more ridiculous amounts of intelligence because it's easier to stack intelligence. Constitution as a stat, each point of con gives you 10 max health, and that is it. That is it. Mentality is also another defensive stat, more of the magic defensive stat. Gives you 2 magic resist. 16 mana is all it gives you. There's really not a reason, and people have not stacked it for that reason because the defensive stacks just don't line up with the offensive stats. Now, has anyone really truly stacked con aggressively and really enchanted it aggressively? I don't think so, but just I had a full like rare level 20 con set that did absolutely nothing when I first leveled up. And that's when I realized, like, hey, as a tank, and I'm playing tank this phase, I played mage last phase. I missed my mage. I don't like tank, so take this with a grain of salt. I don't like tank much, and tank is not going to be my main. Summoner is going to be my main, so I'm jumping around archetypes until Summoner comes out. But Con just feels weak as hell. Mitigation rating in general feels kind of weak. Now, has anyone really juiced up a mitigation set? I don't know. And I did hear one person say that mitigation rating, if you get stats with mitigation rating on it, like the Steel Bloom Ring, and once we have Journeyman Enchanting, mitigation rating gives you mitigation to magic, physical, fire, ice mitigation. You know, like how the Carfin set has necrotic mitigation, the stuff in the Ford gives fire mitigation. It gives you all those mitigations. I was told somebody late at night, it was another GM. I'll be honest, I was kind of asleep and I wasn't paying attention. He was throwing a bunch of equations and numbers at me. I don't remember exactly what he said, but all I kind of remember is mitigation rating good, right? And so maybe if we're able to stack mitigation rating, once we get higher level, Journeyman Enchanting, and if there's enough mitigation items, I personally have not seen a lot of items with mitigation rating on it. But if there is a lot of items like that, maybe there is. I'll poke around the codex. Maybe there is. Maybe that's the answer. Maybe tanks stack mitigation, and then they're actually able to survive more than 2 seconds against a 500 magic power mage. However, the issue is it is very easy for mages in comparison. This is kind of the physical set, right? And there's some issues with like stacking as much physical power as there is magical power. One, the accessories just aren't quite as good. Like for instance, your best ring right now is the Halcyonite ring, which gives you strength, but it's max health and armor for the other stats. And then in comparison, you've got like mages who have the bone ring, which gives you intelligence and wisdom. Your primary and your secondary, and it gives you magical power rating. It's just massively better. And then you got Hoodwinks, which is very good, and the Doomsday Necklace, which is just massively better. Then, well, actually, the Kingfish isn't too bad. Maybe that's not a good comparison. But the other thing is these items in general are actually easier to craft too. Getting the materials and stuff for a lot of these is actually not quite as hard. That's why you see a lot of juiced mages out there. But the thing is, like, being able to stack up to 500 power at level 25, maybe there should be caps on how much you can stack intellect. Maybe there's caps on even a soft cap. Once you get to 300 power, there's diminishing returns. A lot of them have had to do this. Maybe they need to put stuff like that in there. And then also, I think they really need to look at the defensive stats. Now, another thing is, once level 20 gear comes online, the raw mitigation... See, look, there's no mitigation rating on a lot of this gear, actually. Most gear does not have a mitigation rating. There is some. But on armor pieces, the raw actual armor stats, like if you look at this Academus, if I was to take this down to like even uncommon, you get 57 to 60 armor here on the pauldrons. Now here is the physical set. The armor and magic resist numbers are a lot lower, and enchanting doesn't juice these up quite as much, right? Because it's only +1 to each stat, and you're starting 20 to 30 lower in a lot of cases. So level 20 gear might make a big difference once that comes online, but that right now is not possible on any server because there's not enough benches to get all the journeyman crafting unlocked. Some journeyman crafting will get unlocked. Journeyman enchanting will get unlocked. But not all the crafting will get unlocked. So that makes it to the point where, because when you look at the actual like strength and things on these pieces, it's actually, not that much lower. It's the armor and magic resist that is quite a bit lower. So maybe level 20 gear will change the equation a little bit. But itemization and stats and gearing creates most of the imbalance, in my opinion, in this game, and it's not the actual archetype abilities and the numbers behind the archetype abilities. That it's the gear. It's the gear, in my opinion. Enchanting, I will say enchanting, I think we need to take a second look at enchanting, because you can just get a bone ring like this. You can +8 it. That's 9 int. Not a single item in this set, like at rare, at least at the rare level, gives 9 int. So that, well, I guess the blue belt, no, the blue belt, that's +8. It starts at +1 or whatever if you're looking at the rare. That one enchanting that to +8, that is more int than any single item in this entire list. That's how people are stacking it. Most of the power is coming from enchanting in this game. The vast majority of player power comes from enchanting, and it's kind of crazy. And so the bottom line is, I want there to be skill expression in PvP. When we do our in-house scrims, and we did a 1v1 tournament in-house in phase 1, I make everybody basically go naked, and we use the level 10 weapons, right? And the time to kill is so much longer, and there's skill expression. You actually see who the better players are. No consumables are used. But we don't have that with the way gear works right now. We do not have that in this game. It's whoever sees the other person first with the janky render distance, whoever gets the first cast off, wins. In a lot of cases, if gear is equal, if you're both at like 300, 400 plus power, that's the thing. And if you're ranged, you have a huge advantage. Especially if you're a magic ranged damage dealer, you have a huge advantage. As a tank, I feel super weak in a lot of cases. And that's part of the reason I don't like tank, is because of gear and balance and things like that. Melee in general has it rough. A lot of it is actually from the gear and not from balancing. And then there's other things as well. There's just like fighters just don't have enough survivability. There's not enough defensive cooldowns on like a fighter. They've got plenty of offensive cooldowns, and if they get in melee range of you, you're dead because they hit extremely hard. And even tanks, when you get your strength stacked up, if I get in melee, I've got pretty good gear. It's not the best on the server by any means. There's tanks with way better gear than me, but when I get in melee range, with all the CC that tanks have, they have an on-demand crit. They have a pretty ridiculous combo that they can do a lot of damage with. If I can get melee range, I can kill about anybody, but it's just getting into melee range is difficult, especially when the grapple doesn't work 90% of the time in PvP, and it makes PvPing as a tank kind of rough, for sure. Even with really good gear, I think it's pretty rough for a tank. So that's it. That's my rant. I think why this matters long term is I think they'll waste a lot of time doing balance passes on archetypes if they don't look at the actual gearing and the numbers behind the gearing. Look at how much magical power there is in relation to physical power. I'm sure they have a way to look that up, and then make some adjustments in gearing. I think that's something that will save them a lot of time in the long run if they start balancing gearing first and then start looking at the archetype balance after that. That's all I have. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.